Hello, this is Daniel from Sound Headquarters. Today we're going to be building bass traps and doing some custom trim work on this front wall of this control room here for my friend Adriano Aliverdi. He's a platinum producer from the Toronto area. I'm going to show you everything we did that in his control room. So check it out. And there's the finished product, a little sneak peek for you. And we're going to start with this bass trap build. So here we go. We're starting out with the framing. And the very first frame that we're going to build for this bass trap is just the standard panel frame like I did in my previous video to hold the piece of rigid ROCKWOOL 80. And you'll see how I'm measuring this out here so that the first frame is going to hit above that electrical outlet there. And because the client needs access to that electrical for his setup. And then we're going to fill in the rest of the room up top underneath the bulkhead there, and we're going to match on both sides just to have symmetrical bass traps for this control room. So we got the first frame in, and now I'm just mocking up the additional top frame to reach to the bulkhead there. I'm just putting both horizontal sections there and measuring the difference against the bulkhead, and then I'll cut my next two pieces to that size and screw the frame together here, and that will make the whole top to bottom of our frames for our first bass trap. And just going to get this screwed together here. All the same assembly as my previous video with the panel frames. So just securing that into itself and into the wall to make sure everything's solid, and just making sure everything is level before we secure it into the wall. Now that the main framing is built, I'm going to triangulate the bottom so that we have something for the insulation to rest on when we fill these bass traps with the acoustic insulation. So I'm just cutting each of these pieces to length to fit, and this doesn't need to be totally perfect fit because it won't be visible once the bass traps are finished. So just got both of my left and right sides in, and now we're going to triangulate this bottom so that I can put a piece of insulation on top in the shape of the corner, and that will just be the base for all of the insulation that we add to the bass trap. So just test fitting until it fits. And there we go. Here's a shot of the bottom of the framing of the bass trap. And now this bass trap is ready to be filled with the insulation. So I put a piece of ROCKWOOL 80 on the bottom, just the rigid to support all the insulation going in. And then on the inside for the fill, I'm using Safe and Sound. And here I'm just putting in some bracing behind the frames, just some small wooden shims for bracing. And this is so that the full piece of ROCKWOOL 80, if anyone brushes against this bass trap or pushes against it, that rigid insulation will never slip inside the frame, and you'll just never have any issues. And if people push and put their hand on the bass trap, it'll just feel the rigid insulation. It's not going to move anywhere. So now bass traps are filled both sides, and these are ready for upholstery and trim, which I believe we're going to get into right now. So there we go. I just have my fabric, the same fabric that we used in the previous video for the panels. This is black crushed velvet, and just securing it the same way I would my panels, all four corners first, and then just gentle tension across all the sides just to make sure there's no wrinkles, that everything is lying flat, and just cutting off the excess here, getting it all trimmed up. And now I'm just upholstering the bottom as well, just so that the insulation isn't exposed to the air, and so that when he's down there plugging in gear or rearranging things, doing cable management, he's not going to see an unfinished bottom of his bass trap there. So here we are mocking up the trim. So I use 1x4 for my trim. Usually for most jobs is 1x4 knotty pine, and just mocking it up here. And yeah, that one didn't work, wasn't level. So yeah, just trial and error basically until it fits the right way you want it, and just cutting my bottom piece against, testing it against the top piece there to make sure they're both the exact same. Power went out there. We kept flipping the power in this room here, setting this using the saw, but no problem. We just flip the breaker back on and keep going. So we repeated the same process on both sides, and the client wanted to do this really cool feature wall. So what we did was we connected both front wall bass traps with these longer lengths of 1x4. We used 1x4x10 so that we didn't have to have any gaps in these spaces. And now we're doing 3 equal spacings for vertical bars. And we end up making a really cool pattern with vertical bars and diagonal bars, which you'll see here. And So the whole reasoning behind this front wall process was to add more wood tone into the control room, just less drywall space. More wood tone is easier on the ears and just a warmer sound overall. It's common in control rooms to have full wood walls or just to add more wood into the room for sound. And we're going to be mounting 3 acoustic panels on this front wall. And the wood trim actually gives us about 3/4 of an inch of spacing from the wall, which is actually going to help our panels perform a little bit better, broaden the frequency response of absorption that these panels can do. So it's a win-win. Looks really cool aesthetically, and we're getting a little bit better performance out of our panels. So here we are just getting our vertical bars in for the trim and just making sure that everything is spaced out equal. And we agreed upon doing 3 verticals behind each panel section, and then filling in the spaces with this really cool diamond pattern that you will see us starting to mock up shortly. So there's all 3 panels mocked up, and here we go beginning on the diagonal pattern. And we just made the spacing equal, so all of our trim pieces within our 1x4 framing is 1x3. Once again, this is knotty pine, and we're just using this wood because it's what's locally available for us, and it's dimensionally stable, and it's milled pretty well, it's cut pretty well. For us to use without a lot of sanding or a lot of prep work before we do our staining. So this is just a time lapse and a lot of measuring and ideally cutting once, right? Measure twice, cut once. So here's the finished product of the trim. It turned out really, really cool. Our client was super happy with it, and I was too. Really, really cool. We haven't really done any features like this on a front wall control room, so really excited to be doing this for my friend Adriano here and showing you guys the process. So here we are. Comes the tedious work of just masking everything, getting everything ready for the stain. And if I didn't mention earlier, we are just tacking all of this trim in with just standard nail gun that you would use to tack in any sort of trim. I believe I use a bigger gauge because I use this stuff to nail together my cloud frames as well. It's 16 gauge pass load nails. And there's the finished product all stained up. And once again, this is all just tedious stuff. We actually had some trouble with this masking tape peeling off some of the paint at the end of the job. But we're going to touch that up before we get our final photos. But here we go, just filling in those little edge pieces, the small pieces that where the fabric meets the actual frame of the wood, just so that that detail is there when you look, there's no exposed wood. Here's the final product. Really cool. The studio ended up sounding really good. We'll do later videos about the actual design process and why we place things where we do. Today, we just wanted to show you guys the bass traps and the custom trim work. Super excited about this build. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I'll get back to everyone as much as I can. And stay tuned for next week. We're going to show the panel install and just the cloud install as well, and just wrapping up all the loose ends for this project. Really excited to show you guys this stuff. Thank you for watching so much. Once again, this is Daniel from Sound Headquarters. Peace out.